Stocks at the Asia Pacific open mixed in the absence of cues from Wall Street and Europe. The GIFT Nifty is indicating a flat start for the Indian markets. Crude prices remain range-bound with Brent near $83 a barrel. Silver surges over 4% overnight, while gold rises from the weekly lows to about $23.50 an ounce. LIC sees total annualized premium equivalent growth beating estimates, while value of new business and VNB margins were a miss on expectations. In key earnings to track today, IRCTC, Aditya Birla Fashion and Brigade Enterprises will report their fourth quarter numbers today. Timken India Singapore parent is likely to sell 6.6% equity via a $213 million block deal today. The deal will be priced at a discount of 10% to yesterday's close. A block deal is also likely in Inox Wind, with the promoter entity expected to sell up to 5% stake. And the world responds in outrage as a retaliatory airstrike by Israel leaves over 45 Palestinian civilians dead. The UN General Secretary Antonio Guterres at a closed-door Security Council meet says that the horror in Gaza must stop, while the French President Macron calls for an immediate ceasefire. The EU's foreign policy chief also says that Israel must heed to the ICJ's order to halt the offensive in Rafah. A very good morning to all of you all this Tuesday. You're watching Power Breakfast on CNBC TV18 in the Mumbai News Center. I am Hormuz Fatakia. Let's first take a look at how the Asian markets have opened this morning. It's a slightly mixed picture, and that is because of the absence of cues from Wall Street. The US markets were shut overnight on account of a holiday. The Japanese indices are flat. The Hang Seng is also trading at the flat line, but with a negative bias. The Hang Seng has been an underperformer all through last week. It saw a bit of a rebound yesterday, but it's still trading with a flat line today with a negative bias. The Taiwanese index, though, is trading with gains of around 0.3%. And pull up the GIFT Nifty as well. That was indicating a slightly flat start for our own markets, and that remains so. The implied open is suggesting a 14-point uptick at the start of trade for our own markets. So sluggish cues coming in from Asia as well, and the GIFT Nifty is also indicating a flat start for our own markets. But for some important voices across the globe, Jonathan Garner, the chief Asia and emerging market equity strategist, calls India an exciting market to be a part of and throws us hints of what to look out for in other Asian markets. Let's listen into what he had to say.
The thing that was being debated is the exit from deflation, the reflationary environment. And our view is that that is now secure. And so we're well into a process of monetary policy normalization. And for some considerable time, Japan has been delivering strong earnings growth relative to the rest of the region and improving corporate ROE. So a lot of the conference was actually about the micro, about investors meeting companies and hearing about their plans for the future, and particularly on the domestic side, how they're going to take advantage from this reflationary environment. In the first quarter, there was a major earthquake right at the start of the year. And it's true that at the low end of the household sector, the weak yen and relatively high commodity prices is making things difficult in relation to disposable incomes. But overall, wages are growing around 3% plus, which is ahead of where we think inflation is. Inflation is trending back down to the low twos at the moment. And indeed, like everywhere else in the world, there are parts of the economy that are doing incredibly well, particularly the semi-tech hardware sector, where wages are very strong and where we're having this very big build-out in terms of semiconductor fabs and things like that. However, we still see no upside. The rally's taken valuations back to long-run averages. In the case of offshore China, about 10.5 forward P. And you mentioned A-shares, that's over 12 times forward P. That's the long-run average. And unlike almost everywhere else in our coverage, including Europe, US, Japan, and India, earnings are still missing. The currency is weak, which actually undermines those renminbi revenue streams. You don't have mega cap exporters in the index, such as you have in Japan or in Europe. So dollar strength is not good news for China. And last week was a very bad week for China equities performance. In fact, Hang Seng and HSCEI were the two worst performing equity indices globally last week. Investors essentially shifted back to Japan. India outperformed China 8%. And with the NVIDIA numbers, the semiconductor stocks here in this region, in Korea and Taiwan, took another very large leg higher. And those are the sorts of things we're more interested in being involved with rather than the China market here. Yes, it would be inappropriate for me to comment on the election in and of itself. What I would say is last week the market did begin to rally, and in our view it is not an expensive market for the earnings growth it's delivering. It's trading around 20 times forward PE, roughly the same multiple as the S&P. It's got the highest return on equity in our coverage. It's around about 16%, so that's getting on for almost double the ROE of China right now. And the earnings growth is very strong, running at about 25% year on year. So it's an exciting market to be involved in, and we actually think that the sort of sell-off that had taken place over the last couple of months effectively began to end last week.
Some important opinion coming in there from Jonathan Garner. Now, the US markets, as we just mentioned, were shut on Monday for the Memorial Day holiday. The futures, however, are higher at this hour. Now, European equities began the week on a positive note, with the French CAC rising about 38 points and the German DAX settling with gains of close to 80 points. The British FTSE was also shut for trading on Monday, but the key European central bank policymakers on Monday said that the ECB has room to cut interest rates, but it must take its time in easing policy, even if the direction of the rates is clear. The next ECB meeting is scheduled on the 6th of June. The investors will watch for the US and the Eurozone inflation data that is due on Friday as well. And that's all we have on the global market action. But how will all of these cues impact our own markets? We have our research team joining in with how the trade setup looks like and the stocks that are likely to be in the news and the F&O setup for the day. I'll first take you through what happened in yesterday's session and some of the cues that you need to watch out for today. Until 2 p.m. yesterday, we had a pretty decent session. But for the Nifty, at least, in the last 90 minutes, we saw a sharp reversal from the highs of the day. We made an intraday high of 23,110 and we reversed from that almost 200 points, closing below the mark of 23,000. So that was the Nifty. The fact that we ended close to the lowest point of the day, and that may not please the bulls, and you might continue to see some jitters like that until we head to the Lok Sabha election results on the 4th of June. But the index that stood tall yesterday, and it has been doing so over the last couple of sessions, is the Nifty Bank. And at one point, it almost looks like it conquered the 50,000 mark yesterday itself. But even just like the Nifty, it saw some selling pressure at around levels of 49,600. But two positives that come from that: it managed to close in the green with substantial gains, unlike the Nifty, which ended in the red, and it also managed to hold on to the 49,250 mark on the downside. The India VIX continues to rise as well. It was up another 6% yesterday, closing higher in the mark of 23. And that was a factor. The volatility in the markets will continue to rise, as the experts are suggesting, as we count down to the election results. Some sectoral outperformers: the PSU banks did very well yesterday. Despite the sell-off in the broader markets, the realty index also did very well. Now, earnings season, we are down to the final few, the fag end of the result season for this quarter, and stocks like LIC that reported results after market hours, that will be reacting to its results. Stocks like Nalco, NMDC, those stocks will also be reacting to their results today. Some important earnings they're reporting today as well. Some major broader market names like Aditya Birla Fashion, there is IRCTC, there is Amara Raja. So all of these stocks will be reporting their results today. And so it's a day of block deals. It's been a while since we reported that. There are multiple stocks which will see block deals today. Stocks like Concord Biotech, Timken India, Inox Wind, all of them will see block deals. So no overnight cues because of the US markets being shut. Asia is flat. The GIFT Nifty is also indicating a flat start. But as I mentioned, it's the day of block deals. And for all of that, we head over to Sudarshan, who would highlight the stocks that you need to watch out for aside of these block deals as well. Sudarshan, good morning.
Good morning, Harma. So as you said, we are in the last leg of earnings season. So we'll start. Two metal companies have reported earnings. We'll start with Nalco. Has reported a good set. It has reported highest quarterly EBITDA in last 2 years. It has come at rupees 1108 crore against pool of 945 crore. NMDC revenue was in line, but EBITDA has missed estimates by 16%, and this miss is on higher royalty and other expenses. Royalty as a percentage of sales has increased to 47% against 40-45% seen in the same quarter last year. Life insurance company LIC has reported earnings which were largely better than estimates. Total APE was up 11% year-on-year versus estimate of 4% growth. Value of new business has slipped 2%, and margin has fallen 215 bips year-on-year. AstraZeneca, it was operationally weak Q4. EBITDA is down 18%. Margin has fallen 800 bips year-on-year. Natco Pharma earnings have missed estimates, but Revlimid contribution has aided earnings year-on-year. EBITDA has come in at 497 crore against estimate of rupees 524 crore. Now coming to stocks in news, start with Adani Energy. company is looking to raise up to 12,500 crore in one or more tranches, and this fundraising will be via equity issuance, QIP or other permissible mode. And Adani Enterprises Board is meeting today to consider fundraising. Timken, sources have promoted Timken Singapore is likely to sell 6.6% equity via block deals, and deal size likely seen at 1,775 crore, and floor price is at a 10% discount to CMP of rupees 3,550 per share. Last is Concord Bio. Sources say Ontario INC may sell 3.4% equity via block deals, and offer size seen at 468 crore, and floor price is likely at rupees 1,320 per share, which is at a discount of almost 8% to closing price of yesterday.
Earnings, reactions, block deals. It promises to be an action-packed session. Sudarshan, thanks a lot for that. And lastly, Mangalam now joins in with cues from the F&O space. Mangalam, good morning. Ended near the lows of the day, did the Nifty, but what's the F&O cues looking like?
Well, if you take a look at the F&O cues, they are speaking about some bit of volatility range after a big up move that we've seen already. So if you just take a look at the last hour, both the Nifty as well as the Nifty Bank did sell off. But that's nothing really to worry about because the broader markets continue to outperform, and that typically happens when the street believes there's limited downside for the frontline indices. It's ahead of elections, it's the expiry week, etc. as well. So volatility is likely to spike, and that was reflected in the kind of move that we saw in the India VIX as well. That should come up for you on the screen. The India VIX actually saw a spike of almost 7% in yesterday's trading session. Well, the Nifty Bank, what was very interesting is that even if it's outperforming, yesterday's high on the Nifty Bank was perilously close to a previous record high. So for the Nifty Bank to sustain above that, it has to actually go past its previous record high and sustain there itself. Not much action in terms of cash market, but net flows were positive. What continues is the FII purchase in index futures. Yesterday as well, they bought about 2,600 crores, where there were about 2,600 long positions added, but shorts, 35,000 short contracts were covered. In the last 3 sessions, the FIs have covered nearly 1,05,000 short contracts, added about 1,25,000 long contracts. And if you just take a look at the FII exposure now, after many, many months, we've seen the FIs turn net long on index futures. So in just last 4 trading sessions, the longs have increased from 31% to 52%, and the net contracts have gone down from 2.19 lakh short contracts to about 22,000 long contracts. So that's the kind of delta that we've seen in just the last 4 trading sessions. The 23,000 put on the Nifty extremely active, telling you there is support around 22,850, and on the way up 23,000 call and 23,100 calls equally active as well, making yesterday's high the first point of resistance. Just watching out a couple of stocks, we have Biocon, which has re-entered F&O ban in yesterday's trading session, and additionally 4 stocks have come out of F&O ban, of which there are Bandhan Bank, India Cements, Nalco as well as Punjab National Bank.
As we draw closer to the expiry, stocks coming out of the F&O ban. Mangalam, thanks a lot for the F&O update this morning. Some flashes on your screen. Wipro has partnered with the Center for Brain Research for its AI-driven health behavior innovations. That'll be another stock to watch out for when we return. But time for a short break. When we return, grounded airline Go First may be headed for liquidation. We get you the details on the other side. Stay tuned. Back on the other side. Back with us on Power Breakfast, and on to the latest in the Go First insolvency case. We learned from sources that lenders are weighing in on the possibility of liquidating the airline to recover their dues. The development comes after the Nishant Pitti Ajay Singh consortium pulled out of the race, leaving Sky One as the sole remaining bidder. Ritu Singh is joining in with more on this. Ritu, what are you picking up from your sources?
At this point in time, the liquidation of Go First seems like the most likely outcome for the airline, which filed for voluntary corporate insolvency a little over a year ago, with one suitor backing out and the sole bidder remaining in the fray. Now, we've been given to understand from sources that lenders to Go First are weighing liquidation for the airline, although no resolution has been passed to this effect just yet. This comes after the Nishant Pitti Ajay Singh consortium withdrew its offer for the airline, leaving just Sky One in the fray. Now, while Sky One did not offer any comments as to whether or not they remain interested, we've been given to understand that they have not communicated with the committee of creditors on their offer for the airline or any changes in it just yet. But even here, we understand that Sky One's offer in its current form is not acceptable to the lenders, given that it primarily hinges on compensation from Go First's case against Pratt & & Whitney. So for now, the Committee of Creditors' focus is on the ongoing Pratt & Whitney litigation at the Singapore court, where Go First is seeking nearly 8,000 crores in compensation. We understand that the lenders are soon going to seek a 60-day extension from the NCLT to complete the corporate insolvency resolution process, with the current deadline ending on the 3rd of June to continue arguing their case in the Singapore court, which at this point in time seems like their best bet for recovery of dues, because remember, Go First owes about 3,800 crores to financial creditors, and the Pratt & Whitney claims, if materialized, will more than cover the financial creditors' dues. The next meeting of the COC is scheduled in early June.
Ritu, thanks a lot for that update. And as Ritu was mentioning, Nishant Pitti of Ease My Trip has withdrawn the bid to acquire Go First. Now, his brother Prashant Pitti, also a co-founder, spoke to CNBC TV18 and said that they are better off as an asset-light company. Listen in.
That's an individual call. That has nothing to do with Ease My Trip. So basically, I'm assuming that it is related to certain course of actions which have taken, and also a self-realization on our part that we are much better off just being an asset-light business model. Anyways, it was from the personal side. It was not from the Ease My Trip side.
Let's also now get you details on a job scam in Cambodia, where youngsters from India were lured on the promise of a well-paying job and were forced to carry out cyber crimes, apart from also being subject to physical torture. These youngsters say that they paid around 1.5 lakh rupees to a local agent for a data entry job and went to Cambodia. As many as 150 of these people are from the port city of Visakhapatnam in Andhra Pradesh. All the victims were coerced to carry out cyber crimes and Ponzi schemes by handlers who are suspected to be of Chinese origin. On your screen are exclusive visuals accessed by CNBC TV18, which show the place where some of these victims worked in Cambodia. At first glance, it looks like any other corporate office, but the victims say that soon after they landed, their passports were seized and they were forced to carry out cyber crimes. Visuals show that these scams were run from buildings that were in the heart of the city and not some remote location. Time for a short break on Power Breakfast. Up next, we get you cues from the commodities market. Stay tuned. We'll be right back. Welcome back. And now to the war in West Asia, where Israel is facing strong criticism following a deadly airstrike in the city of Rafah. Local officials say that it hit an area where civilians were living after being displaced from their homes by the war. NBC's Raf Sanchez files this report.
Fire and horror in Rafah. An Israeli airstrike at a camp for displaced civilians, setting tents and cars aflame. Fire crews in Hamas-run Gaza say at least 40 people were killed, many of them women and children. One of the deadliest bombings in Rafah of the entire war. The Red Crescent says it happened in a designated safe zone. But Israel says the strike killed 2 senior Hamas commanders responsible for attacks in the occupied West Bank, adding it is aware of reports indicating that as a result of the strike and fire that was ignited, several civilians in the area were harmed. The incident is under review.
Sitting is open.
The UN's highest court has ordered Israel to halt the Rafah offensive, but has no power to enforce the ruling. And Israel giving no sign it will comply, saying hostages are being held in Rafah.
We will not stop fighting for their freedom.
On Sunday, Hamas fired rockets towards central Israel for the first time in 4 months. With sirens blaring in Tel Aviv, the IDF says the rockets came from Rafah. Meanwhile, further up the coast, new questions about the safety of U.S. service personnel after 4 small army boats broke their moorings in heavy seas, washing up in Israel and Gaza. The ships were delivering aid through an American-built temporary pier. U.S. Central Command saying no injuries have been reported and the pier remains fully functional. But 3 U.S. personnel did suffer non-combat injuries last week, the Pentagon says. 1 seriously wounded.
And Israel's attack on Rafah has prompted an outcry from global leaders. The United Nations convened an emergency closed-door meeting following the strike. In the meeting, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres said that there was no safe place in Gaza and ordered for the horror to stop. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has told Parliament that the strike was not intended to kill civilians and that something unfortunately went tragically wrong. And Manisha Gupta now joins in with all the cues from the commodity space. Manisha, good morning. What are you picking up?
Well, with all this Israel strike at Gaza's Rafah has led to a lot of opportunity buying that we've seen as a safe haven in case of precious metal prices. So there was a big uptick in the overnight markets. We saw the gold prices come back above $2,350 an ounce from a 3-month low that they were trading at. It was a very strong gain for silver prices, which gained 4.5% in the overnight markets. Well, apart from Israel, there also were statements coming in from Russia that they will build a small nuclear plant in Uzbekistan. And then there are thunderstorms that have swept U.S. southern plains and Ozarks and killed 19 people there. So there were various things happening around globally which have led to safe haven buying come back in gold and silver. Not just that, there is tangible commodity buying also happening. So you have the copper prices gained up by 1.5% overnight. The concerns that this could impact the oil supply had the crude oil prices jumping almost 1.5% overnight. What the markets will do now is that they're watching out for the U.S. personal consumption expenditure data. That would tell you on what direction the U.S. Fed could move. And then apart from that, it is the China PMI that comes in this week as well. So important data points also coming in that would give you further direction.
Well, stay on, Manisha, because the IMD has issued a fresh weather forecast last evening. What's the latest on that front?
Oh, well, yes. And, it does stand intact on what they had said earlier as well, reiterating that 106%, which is above normal of a monsoon, is what you can expect in this year. So it's going to be above normal in central India and southern India, but below normal if you are in northeast and just about normal if you are in northwest. So they have given a very clear indication on what geographies you could see when it comes to monsoon as well. For the month of June, it's a wide range of 92 to 108% is what they are saying. But then accordingly, if you're looking at below normal monsoon in Northeast, that is how the numbers will start changing. But interestingly, the IMD also said, Hormuz, that higher number of heat wave days for northwest and adjoining parts of central India is what you can expect for the month of June as well. Now remember, it is by mid-July or 10th of July that you see monsoon covering the whole of India. So I think June is going to be still looking at some heat wave days for some parts of the country.
Some good news, at least, for those suffering from this heat, and that includes us as well. Manisha, thanks a lot for that update. But with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Power Breakfast. From me and the team that put this show together, thank you so much for watching. Bazaar Morning Call takes the action forward.